In the last video I did in my Trout Fly series, the pattern I tied up was Walker's Mayfly Nymph. One of the things I didn't quite like about the nymph itself, not trying to knock it in any way, shape or form, because it's an exceptionally good nymph, has been around for a long time. But I do think angora rambus, just not necessarily something a lot of tyers are going to have access to in the stash locally without pretty much having to order it in specifically. And if it's not quite the right colour, trying to dye it and mix and all that, it's just a bit of a pain. So I'm not massive fan of the material itself. I do think more people will have hare's masks available to them. So I've used hare's mask throughout, and the only other material I've actually used is pheasant tail. So very simplistic. Apart from a little bit of kind of bling that I put into the dubbing, into the thorax, it is pretty much just hare's mask and pheasant tail. So I wanted it simplified in that regards. At the same time, I wasn't a big fan of the banding on the nymph, where you tie them in, kind of lash them in, going around the hook shank. I find that's probably just an easier, slicker way of doing it. So not entirely sure what everyone's thoughts are going to be, how well it will go down. Also, it's probably been done before too, so again, not trying to reinvent the wheel, just something that stuck out to me. I thought, you know what, if it's not been done, it ought to be. So let me know what you think. Let me know if you like the pattern or if you think it's an absolute waste of time. But there you go. This is a Mayfly Nymph that I've tied out of hare's mask. So it's essentially just a hare's mask Mayfly. Hope you enjoy the pattern. Let's go on the tying. The hook in the vise is a mustard barbless Mayfly Nymph hook in size 12, and the thread I'm using is Vivis 12 Autumn Brown. I'll start off with a thread base from just behind the hook eye, leave myself that little bit of room, roughly about half a hook eye's distance, maybe even a hook eye itself. And I'll just work the thread wraps. I'm going to work the thread wraps nice and deep into the bend and really maximise the shape of the hook. At the same time, what I also want to do is not go too far and then jeopardise the gape too. So I'll maximise the bend of the hook, but stop well short of impeding with the gape. I'm using cock pheasant tail fibres for the tail. Roughly 8 or so. No need to count them. Going to measure those up to around about the length of the thorax section. I'm just going to catch those in, add in a few turns, and then work back down to the base, just like so. Now for the body, I'm using some hare's mask, and it's the kind of nice light cream fibres that you can find all across a hare's mask and hare's ear. So you got to do a bit of digging around and hunting for it. So on this hare's mask, it was around the cheek area that I got that off. So I've taken it off there so you can actually see it. There's a nice kind of soft, creamy colour to it. Not necessarily always the underbody or the under fur on a mask, unfortunately, because you can see this one. It's got quite a lot of grey into the mix of the under fur. So on this one, you're probably looking into the ear section there. But yeah, you're just looking for some some light creamy coloured soft fur for the body section. I'm going to add in a little bit of wax just to help it grip and help me get a nice tight dubbing needle with this. Now once you can't start catching the dubbing needle when you put wax into it, it's not going to let you slide up and down like you might be able to if you hadn't put that on there, but it also does mean you can just get that slightly tighter dubbing needle. So you have to kind of work it in pretty close to the hook shank to begin with. Okay. Start adding in the initial body section. Pull that back. Add in a few wraps and just start building up that taper. Pull that forward. couple of wraps there just to trap it in. Pull it back again. Need a little bit more. Dubbing on that. Okay, I'm just gonna beef that out a little bit. It's a little bit on the skinny side. Get that taper going now. Okay, from there, gonna again just pull it forward and just check that it's not rolling off to either side, because you'll find that sometimes when you go to catch those fibres in, they like to roll to the other side. So just a quick little check that. Okay, and then from there I'm just going to catch them in, snip off. You can leave those fibres for later, you're going to need them. Now the next bit, take the same dubbing, no wax or anything to increase the tightness of the dubbing needle. I want it in relatively loosely because I'm now going to add in a really thick chunk to it. That's going to get brushed out quite heavily. Okay. Just going to go in at the dubbing needle, my dubbing brush or a bit of marker that I use for it. Really just kind of brush that all out, get it nice and fuzzy. Don't want it long, just want it fuzzy. Okay, up to the hook eye there. For the legs, pheasant tail fibres again, so I'm just going to take kind of roughly 8 or 10. Measure those out to thorax. No, not quite how I want those. Rather put them in long then. You can tie them a little bit long and then just drag them back. That should be right. Okay, now I'm going to take some of the stubs we had earlier, or just some extra ones where we've got lying around, and then just cash those in at the same time. Lie flat. Now for the thorax, I take the same stuff, but I add a few garters into the mix, and I also add a little bit of golden UV mix in there too, just to liven it up a little bit, give it a little bit more bugginess to it too. Okay, so with this, not that loose. I do want it in loose, but not that loose. Okay, peel those as evenly as you can to the side, then back and down. Bit of wax into the mix there, pull those forward. Quick pinch and loop. And then just build in a quick head section in there. Support the hook while I do this. Alright, I'm just going to push everything back. Working a very, very quick, small head section in that. In with a whip finish. quick varnish. If you want to add some UV resin, etc., you can do, but that essentially is not far off the finished article. Bit of varnish, you're done. Hope you've enjoyed that.